Mr. Devadoss has more than 14 years of experience in corporate sustainability with a focus on ESG, renewable energy, green buildings, clean mobility, etc. Comes with experience in RE100, carbon neutrality, and science based target initiatives. He's responsible for decarbonization actions across the value chain, offering customers their favorite sport products with lower emissions. He has an MTech in Renewable Energy Engineering and Management from Terry School of Advanced Studies and was also my batchmate in Terry, so very happy to have him here. Ms. Grover has over 26 years of experience in sustainable development in India and the UK. In her current role, she heads global ESG with a focus on developing a climate change strategy for the organization. She heads CSR for India and Europe. She was recognized and awarded by CSR Works Singapore as one of Asia's top sustainability superwomen in 2020. Has completed programs in climate change policy and public health from University of Wisconsin, Business Sustainability Management from Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and EU Green Deal from Florence School of Regulation. Mr. Alok A. Kumar at Fortis Healthcare heads the company's ESG initiatives and leads the ESG Champions team. He focuses on on-ground initiatives such as improving energy and water efficiency and ensuring biomedical waste management at the hospitals. Prior to his current role, he led the managing director's cell at Jindal Stainless. He is a Tata Administrative Services Officer 2013 batch and has worked in various streams across the Tata Group. He has a bachelor's degree in architecture from IIT Kharagpur and a PGDM from IIM Bangalore. Mr. Lachhwani from DP World has around 2 decades of experience, bringing a wealth of knowledge in the areas of environment, safety, and sustainability. In the past, he's worked with organizations such as ABB, Asian Paints, Unilever, Castrol, BP, and Coca-Cola. A mechanical engineer from NIT Jaipur with an MBA in Safety and Sustainability Management from IIM Mumbai. Dr. Monga from Leela Palaces, Hotels and Resorts, has over 17 years of experience, started his career as a marine engineer at Indian Navy, and has worked at several renowned hotels in the industry. He has experience in technical operations and management and is responsible for conducting regular training, fire drills, ensuring efficiency levels, as well as plant maintenance and power generation. He has 5 years of experience as a faculty member in the IT department of Indian Navy, has a PhD in health and safety, as well as an MBA in PMHR. Finally, we have with us Ms. Rachika Sahay, has over 17 years of experience in handling deals across the sector, ranging from bid advisory services to structuring of project SPVs, licenses, permits, land acquisition, statutory approvals, a resolution on operational issues and challenges along disputes. Clients include various companies like oil and gas majors, energy producers, manufacturers, real estate developers. She's been recognized as one of India's top 30 female lawyers 2023 and as a recommended lawyer in corporate and M&A by the Legal 500 Asia Pacific Rankings 2023. Great. May I request all the panelists to please join me on the stage? Do we have more mics that we can have on the stage? A very warm welcome to all of you, and I know we are running a lot behind schedule, but I'll try to cover it up. And I would request you all to also keep your answers a little brief so that we can have more questions and more of interaction. Right. Starting with the first round of questions, if we can just have very quick, just 2-minute remarks from all of you on what targets, what plans does your organization have regarding net zero, regarding science-based initiatives, right, regarding renewable energy procurement. Just very brief 1-2 minute remarks on just those. We'll come to challenges, strategies, all of those things later. I'll start with you, Dr. Monga.
Hi, my name is Dr. Manish Monga. So I work for a hotel called Leela Palace Chanakapuri. I take care of Udaipur and Jaipur as well. I take care of entire northern region. So when we started working on this net zero, it was a very it's a very new subject for everyone. And working for a hospitality which is like run for 24/7. I think maybe most of you must be aware of the Leela Palace Delhi. It's like based out of a very diplomatic location which take care of a lot of head of states, and working in that luxury towards sustainability or this kind of practices where reduction, and as an engineer the main eye stops at us because we are the like all are like generating a revenue and we are the only consumers, so everything comes on us to cut down on your costs, and working towards it's a nightmare for us. Suddenly something is coming, and working for a company called Brookfield, which is renowned for it's owned by now Brookfield. So Brookfield itself is the name of like it's a real estate company which works on a like a square feet, uh, the pricing on a square feet square inches. So working toward this strategies on net zero and green power. So what we have identified, we have done the complete energy mapping for our hotel, our organization, entire organization, basically. So what we found like the 40% or 50% of the energy goes to the HVAC. So, like we are sitting here, so you can see the temperature. It will should be around 22 degree inside the, which is like 2 degree above actually. As per ASHRAE, it is should be 24, 26. So, but it is 22 because it is comfortable for us. If it is 24, 26, definitely we speak. Our action are different, and what we speak, it's totally different. And coming out from a very luxury, super luxury hotel, it is very difficult to what to attain the guest satisfaction and works towards his goals. So I think it's a very like a daily climate nowadays. It's very hazy. It's not clear for me actually. It's a very like unclear picture for me still. So I have like going forward. Definitely, I'm gonna share my challenges to follow this path. So maybe I'll take more time, or maybe once I get a time, I'll definitely gonna share my like concerns. We are ready to spend money like on solar panels. If somebody give me an opportunity to install solar panels, I'm ready to spend that. My company is ready to spend that. But through IEX, I was speaking to Mr. Gupta also. IEX is not possible here. So yeah. So sorry, there is a lot of things to say.
Do you have a clear roadmap in terms of targets or plans?
So we do have like we already have a partner EY on board, and we are already working on scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. In fact, everyone was saying like nobody was working on scope 3. We have already started working on this. So we have a partner called KPMG EY. They are already working with us. So we are on that track, and we have a plan, complete plan on this carbon like reduction, and we already have a plan in place. There is a lot of things with our portfolio, which is around 50% on renewables now. So we already have a plan to make it 60% next year. So it is already there in pipeline. So
Um, Mr. Kumar, I know there's a shortage of mics, but we have to manage somehow. Mr. Kumar, the next question for you, since I've tried to have you seated together, since you also come from a similar background. So, what are your targets or plans? Quick response from your side.
So sure. So we come from hotels to hospitals now.
Yeah.
And see, before I go to this whole goal bit, a quick comment. See, decarbonization to me essentially is like tightening a screw. It's very easy when you start it, and after a certain time, it becomes very difficult to even move an inch. Now, at Fortis Healthcare, we have since the last 2.5 years now calculating per occupied bed energy and water for all the 27 different hospitals. Last year, we reduced our energy per occupied bed by around 3.5%, which translated to around 3.5 crores of costs. This year, we are working towards achieving even bigger, like 4% of reduction. But that's about energy, per occupied bed energy. I'm not coming to now coming to the carbon emissions. We hope to reduce our carbon emissions, scope 1 and scope 2, by around 35% by 2035. But that's something we are working on. We need to be confident about that. Because there should be a glide path. It's very easy to say 20% by 2020 or 30% 2030. As long as you do have a glide path for that, that's what we are working on. Very soon you will see some sort of communication coming out from us that
Right.
this is where we are going to be.
Right. Thanks. Deepan, same question for you. Decathlon, what are your plans in terms of carbon emission reduction or renewable energy integration?
Yeah, as you know, Decathlon is one of the largest sport retail brand. So while we move people through wonders of sport, we have an internal purpose to be the beacon of light and driving force for a sustainable future. And we have a global commitment, since we have presence in 60 plus countries, we have a global commitment to reach the net zero target by 2050. And so also to reduce our emissions by at least 42% by 2030 on absolute scale across the value chain. When I say across value chain, it includes retail, logistics, and supply chain as well. And major part of our emissions comes from product and production. That is more than 70%. And so we focus more on raw material sourcing part to reduce the impact of raw material sourcing, impact of emissions over there, and also to help our supply chain partners to transition towards clean energy in manufacturing. That includes renewables and zero coal transitions. And then we move to transportation part where we focus more to reduce the transportation energy mix, reducing the air shipments as much as possible. When we move towards the retail, we focus again on renewable energy transition for our retail stores and logistics and warehouses, and also to energy efficient operations and sustainable constructions and all this. Slightly towards the business side, we also foster towards sustainable or circularity more into our business, and to promote more of giving second life to the most loved sport products, and rental and buyback and all these options as well. Additionally, we foster and we are just like focus more to influence our teammates and customers by promoting sustainable practices among them, and through events and campaigns.
All right.
So this is our global strategy.
Thanks. Moving to Ms. Grover now. Same question for you at Apollo Tyres.
Yeah, sure.
What?
Greetings to everyone. Thank you, Khushbu. That's a difficult task to keep all of us on time. It's a hard one. I know, I can understand that. So I will just start. Basically, I head Apollo Tyres globally. So we have 7 manufacturing locations across. It's not just in India, it's overseas as well. So when I talk about global strategy of ours, of course, everybody talks about net zero. So that is a given. But the net zero is not just aligned with India, but it's aligned with the European Green Deal. And that's something I'm looking at it specifically a lot. And in the morning, there's a lot of conversation about EU ETS and all that stuff. So that's something which goes hand in hand. But you cannot measure anything until you monitor, or you can't monitor until you measure. So of course we have commitments as well. Along with net zero, I would say this year we actually, because our commitments were intensity based earlier. So when we started, so we had intensity based commitments, and that's what you would see till 2026. We have intensity based commitments for scope 1, scope 2, and very importantly, which you've highlighted over here for value chain emissions as well, scope 3. We've done work, but we did not have any commitments, and I'm being very candid about it. But now we have made this commitment on SBTI, and we are working. So something that you do not see, but it's not that something that's not happening. So there is a huge piece of work that's happening on absolute based emissions. Because we have, what we do is we usually put midterms and then go forward. So whatever we were supposed to achieve by 2026, we kind of almost there by 2025. But now the piece of work that we're doing is for overall 2030. What does that commitment look like for us? So I'd be very happy to talk to people about it. And I think some of the things which have already been mentioned, but I just highlight something very specific. A life cycle of a tire goes through 5 stages. Whilst we're monitoring the manufacturing side, but it's a lot of work that needs to be done before, which is the production of raw material, where we have a commitment and we're extensively working. I can talk about it later. Most importantly, in the life cycle of a tire, you have 2 stages. Forget about the logistic side, but 2 stages, which is the use phase of a tire. Maximum emission comes from the use phase of a tire. And how we tackle that, I'd be happy to talk about that as well later. And the other bit is the end of life tire, which the countries, not just India, extensively overseas as well, we're experiencing a lot of problems. So of course, I see the legislation helps us move the needle, and we see it as an enabler because EPR is there, extended producer responsibility, for people who are not familiar with abbreviations. But very importantly, the two phases we are working on as well, which is the end of life tires and the use phase of a tire, because that's where the maximum emission comes from. And then, of course, raw materials. So manufacturing is still, I would say, an easy one where you can, you have a control over. But the others are the difficult elements in the life cycle of a tire, and that's something which is very, very important for us.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Lachhwani, plans at DP World.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I am from DP World, as she said, and we are into logistics. Basically, we touch almost all the industries and we are the trade enablers for domestic as well as the export-import trade. And whatsoever scope 3 we have been talking about, all the organizations which are working towards that, we happen to be the emissions for those because we handle kind of warehousing, transportation for them. And we have detailed and elaborate plans for our decarbonization, and we call it our sustainability framework or strategy, which we call as Our World, Our Future. And to keep it short, we have our targets and ambitions validated by SBTi, and the targets to be specific are 42% reduction by 2030 and becoming net zero by 2050. And when I say decarbonization plan, so we have 5-pronged approach, right from converting most of our equipment into electrification and then sourcing maximum renewable power, process efficiencies, going for carbon neutral or low carbon fuels, and then finally carbon compensation whatsoever we won't be able to reduce.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sahay, definitely a very different question for you. But in what kind of trends have you seen? I mean, you've been in this space and working with a lot of these corporates for a very, very long time. So what has been your observation? Are corporates now becoming more and more serious about some of these issues? Are they more willing to, take up some of these issues and work towards decarbonization? What is your take on that?
No, absolutely. We've seen significant change in the way the corporates have come around in terms of procuring renewable energy, contributing towards decarbonization in various ways. So, for example, if you look at procurement, it can be done in various ways by setting up captive power projects, by third-party procurement, through exchanges, and more. We've seen more and more corporates now committing themselves to, for example, even setting up captive power projects, which means that they have to contribute 26% of the capital that's required to set up these projects, have to commit themselves to procuring at least 51% of the power, etc. And though it works for them as well, sometimes this power comes out to be much cheaper than what the DISCOM is supplying. But also there is that effort being put by most of the corporates that, yes, we have to go and we have to contribute towards sustainability and decarbonization. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. The next round of questions, I'll try to have different questions for all the panelists. And I'll start with you, Mr. Lachhwani, since you yourself said that you, being a logistics guy, are responsible for a lot of carbon emissions that these guys are
So
if you could just point, like you said, you have a roadmap, but if you could just point out 2-3 key priority areas for you right now in terms of where you're concentrating the most and in the next 1 or 2 years.
as I said, electrification of equipment is one. So the kind of operations we are into, so just for everybody's perspective, when I say we are into logistics, we are right from handling ports and terminals operations to multimodal operations like running our own private freight trains, express business, contract logistics, pre-trade zones, business park, and everything. So some of the equipment like cranes and all, ports and all would be extremely energy guzzlers. And hence what we are doing over there is electrification of equipment. All of those cranes which used to be running on, say, diesel power, we are trying to electrify most of them. So that's one area. Then there are various material handling equipment, right from routine forklifts that you would see to the equipment like reach trackers, you would handle those 40 feet containers and all. So again, electrification of those. So electrification is one thing. Sourcing renewable electricity either from our own captive generation, in-house generation is one. So we have installed approximately 8 megawatt of solar panels at our facilities. Then we are we have also signed power purchase agreements, and 2 of our terminals are sourcing more than 11 megawatt of power from these solar panels. And third is, as I said, we are trade enablers, and the idea is how do we change the mindset of the industry and decarbonize their supply chain or the value chain. So we provide multimodal solutions. And just to give perspective, say between road transportation on trucks vis-a-vis to coastal transportation or a rail transportation, coastal and rail are approximately 1/10 carbon emitters as compared to road. So we are trying to work with these industry members and develop bespoke solutions for them. One case in point was we worked with one of the manufacturers somewhere in south of India for their value chain for transporting material from south to somewhere in NCR zone. And with these multimodal solutions using rail, using coastal, and only the first mile and the last mile on road, we were able to reduce more than 50% of their carbon emissions in their value chain. So these would be some of the actions that we are doing for ourselves as well as customers.
Right. Thank you. Coming to you, Deepan, and I'll put the same question to you also, Ms. Grover. You spoke about sourcing of raw materials and also so when you talk about sourcing of raw materials and your channel partners or your vendors, do you also try to sort of educate them on their own decarbonization practices, their own sustainability practices, or do you have a mandate to only associate with a certain kind of or a certain breed of suppliers? Is that something?
Great question. Thank you, Khushbu. So one thing is like we focus more about with the suppliers who has the most of our emission, that is who contributes to 90% and above the emissions for our supply chain, right? So in that case, few suppliers are there matured. They know what they are supposed to do and all these things, how to source renewable electricity, how to become zero coal. But it doesn't stop over there. For the matured supplier, they need more in terms of like understandings. What is the real renewable energy? How to avoid double counting? How to take care of a biodiversity impact? So those things like, because now the market demand is also like more to avoid the term greenwashing. So our focus will be to educate them on that through regular training programs. That's for that, for the mature suppliers. For the suppliers who are new to this space, who are yet to evolve in sourcing mechanism of net zero or like strategies to reduce their emissions, so we need to handhold them in sourcing renewables. So we provide some support in terms of consulting services, paid consulting services, which we take care of to help them to find the right partners for them to source. Because we don't focus just for our part of manufacturing. So when we are working with some supply partners, there will be other brands who will also be like working with them. But we consider the whole site to source maximum renewable energy or becoming more zero coal, complete zero coal, rather than just our part. So sometimes we collaborate with the like-minded industries and to educate them, and sometimes we do it alone when there is no need or no recommendations or push from other brands. So that's how we just like educate them, and it's a continuous process,
Right.
and till they reach what they're supposed to reach over.
Right. Ms. Grover, same question.
So there are three things actually in here I can highlight. One is in terms of when we're procuring raw materials. Procuring of raw materials, it could be bio-based materials or it could be the normal way. So what we do is there is hand-holding, and I can just take a couple of examples over here. For instance, when you're looking at tire manufacturing, currently it's an upcoming legislation in Europe which talks about how you're not supposed to get rubber from deforested land. So that's going to come up very soon. So we've already started to work on that. But with that, because most of the rubber comes from natural, smallholder farmers. So it's kind of hand-holding them, explaining them where exactly, that's one side of it, and also supporting them in terms of procuring. But one very, very important thing over here is awareness raising and making sure they're on the same journey. Because when you talk about decarbonization and net zero in its own self, it's not there. You have to have your supply chain or your value chain largely a part of it as well. So the second thing I would talk about is awareness raising. So what we have done is we've got workshops and we actually are on the global platform for sustainable natural rubber. So we've had workshops for marginal farmers, trying to see where exactly they can, they can actually follow certain kind of protocols, and then the labor fair wages are paid. Very, very important to us. Most importantly, the third thing which we've done is we've not only, so before getting the suppliers on board, we have a procurement policy where most of them kind of sign up, and that's a criteria. But most importantly, what we're doing is we're monitoring. So we've got a third party, which is a platform that we use for the entire ESG matrix that the organization is utilizing. We want to utilize it for our suppliers as well. And that's something that we've done over, I would say, when I talk about natural rubber, 100% of our suppliers have signed the Polo Sustainability Natural Rubber Policy. So that means they'll adhere to the guidelines, but now we're going to monitor as well through a third party, not through us. And over 80% of the other suppliers who are with us on this journey have also signed up with this, because obviously it's hand-holding, taking baby steps, because sometimes some of the raw materials might not be there in terms of bio-based materials. So these are the kind of three things that we do in terms of making sure that bio-based materials are there, trying to figure out awareness raising and monitoring and evaluation as well, because that is a part of our process.
Right. Coming to you, Mr. Kumar, in hospitals, or for you, Dr. Monga, when you talk about hotels, so what are the key problem areas where you, as in your respective roles, what are the key problem areas for you?
No, thanks
when you
for
talk
asking
about
that question.
decarbonization?
Yeah, so let's try to understand this question itself, and then what all of us are saying here. There's a dichotomy here. Out of the six people sitting here, 3 are from goods and 3 are from services. Decarbonization means different if you are in a goods company, and it means different if you're in a services company. Even sustainability becomes different. Why I say that? Because, like I said before working in the services, I was in the manufacturing setup. I was manufacturing steel. Carbon itself, it's easier to measure, relatively easier to measure when it's scope 1 and scope 2. I'll come to scope 3. But scope 1 and scope 2, it's easier to measure if you are in the goods part of the question. Once you come to the services part, and now come to hospital, scope 1 suddenly gets limited to chemical reagents, anesthetic agents, a few other things. Scope 2 becomes bigger. The energy is huge. A hospital consumes 3.6 times higher energy than any building, commercial or residential. And then decarbonization itself is sort of limited for us. Then things open up even further. So the challenges are, now water becomes very important for us, right? Hospitals waste tons and tons of water. Nobody asks about it. Biomedical waste. Biomedical waste is something, even waste, India is like grappling with the waste thing. Waste is something that everything that you do in segregating and managing and disposing waste the right way would not be represented in the right way if you would just talk about decarbonization, right? That's the first bit. Second, so in hospitals, we focus on, like I said, energy, water, and waste, the three of them. Some of them are partially represented in the decarbonization journey, some of them are not. Challenge, the biggest challenge that we face is the vendors. So the question that you asked, the vendors. Now, there's some vendors which are very easy for us to kind of, even ask questions, get data from, and then kind of, have two-way communication, like Philips and the Siemens of the world. But then, and I was having this chat with Hitesh some time back. There's a vendor of mine, it's a big vendor, like, supplies services to us in almost all the 25 different hospitals. And what they do, every day the doctors, when they do surgery, they don't wear their normal clothes, they wear scrubs. And then the scrubs need to be washed. Now these vendors, it's very difficult for anybody to kind of, go and ask them what is your sustainable procurement policy, or are you sustainable, or should I not buy from you if you are not this or that. It becomes very tough when when you go to the ground. So and when I kind of analyze the vendors that we work with, fortunately or unfortunately, none of the vendors that I work with exceed that 2% mark of business value. So in a way, I am very diversified. If one vendor, tries to act funny, that does not, impact my operations. That's good. But the other thing is, suddenly the line becomes so huge that once you start thinking about your scope 3 emissions, I'm talking about the upstream first, uh, then the first thing that needs to be done is to sensitize all these smaller vendors, which is, the line is huge. And that's where we are right now. We are conducting sessions after sessions about what does sustainability mean for a healthcare provider, right? And then the vendors beyond that. So these are the challenges.
Right. Dr. Monga.
To add on this, like scope 3. So like we are also on a scope 3, scope 1, scope 2 is like almost online. So scope 3, when you ask the vendors like their sustainability practices, so I would rather add here, so till the time government is like incentivize or something, they should give it to them. Then only they will follow that. I mean, like why my vegetable vendor will come on a EV? So if he has not got any like incentives or something like that from the government, any policies, anything, it's all hazy. Like I mean, there is nothing clear on that. Basically, I have means like we are keep on asking them how you are doing that. And the one more thing, Mr. Venu was telling the emissions, the calculations. So it is still not standardized. So I was talking to the EY, like our partner. I was talking to him like how you are calculating this EY, I mean this emissions. So they are still following that universal guidelines. The product I am producing here in India, it may not be generating that much of emissions, basically, but it is still in that scope 3. It is showing the same thing.
Right.
So this kind of like problems which can be solved from the top. Policies has to be clear first, and the people who are doing this, I don't know what will happen when the EV cars will go for a dispose, like the amount of emissions will come. I'm not clear about that. Like we are promoting EVs, vehicles. What happened when the batteries will go for a dispose? So whether it will be more harmful than the emission we are generating now. So I'm not clear about that basically.
Right. Ms. Sahay, in terms of the legislations that we have in India right now, any particular law or legislation that you can cite which can sort of maybe address one or two points that were discussed in this round of questions?
So basically, Khushbu, what's happening is that, as people are pumping money into the sector, there are issues that are arising, and then, through legislations or through court orders, those issues are put to rest eventually. So for example, in captive projects, there was a lot of confusion around whether if it's a group captive and there are 4 people who are drawing power after the project, then do they have to draw power in proportion to their shareholding in the company or not, right? Which was put to rest only a few months ago, where Supreme Court then finally came up with an order. There were multiple orders. There were diverse judgments saying different things, and then Supreme Court finally came up with the judgment saying that yes, there has to be a proportionality rule that you need to apply. So there are 3 rules. There is ownership test, which is that 26% needs to be held in a certain proportion if there is a group captive. There's a consumption test that you need to draw 51%. And then there was a proportionality test that was brought about. And they said that if you're holding 26% in a certain proportion, then you need to draw that 51% in a similar proportion. Thankfully, I think since the time these projects have been developed, people had somewhere, just kept it to the proportions already, There might be minor deviations to the proportion, but largely it didn't really shake the industry at that point in time. But now what's happening is that ISTS projects are coming, right? So a lot of people are now setting up interstate transmission projects where there is development that's happening or generation happening in a couple of states, consumption happening in completely different states, and there is power being transmitted from one state to the other. Now, with that, obviously there are new regulatory issues that are being thrown in the market, right? So for example, we've been advising a lot of players since past 1 year on how, for example, in captive, you need to do an annual filing to show that it's a captive project, right? That you're meeting these tests that I laid out. Now, So now with the ISTS project, earlier if you're setting up a project in the state, with the local authority, you need to do that annual filing. Now if the generation is happening in one state and consumption is happening in a completely different state, who do you show that you are still a captive project and you're meeting the requirements of law, right? So that's become like a new point of confusion. Similarly, there are other transmission related issues that people are facing, metering and measuring related issues that people are facing. And people are setting up projects, but because right now no project has gone into operation stage and there is no transmission happening yet through ISTS, we are yet to see how this will eventually play out. But yes, there are gaps in the regulations. There is no understanding of how it will play out eventually. But yes, there are big players who've still entered the market knowing that, eventually it'll be creased out.
Right. Thank you. The next question, Ms. Grover, I'll start from you. In terms of, maybe you can take the mic from, yeah. So in terms of your own company's energy mix, could you give us a sense of that? What is the share of renewables right now? And what are you ideally targeting in terms of your renewable energy mix over the next years?
Okay, thanks. So when we're talking about renewable energy mix, of course, one of the very important things is moving away from fossil fuel. And that is a big thing with us currently in all our manufacturing locations, because when over here, I'm assuming people would be familiar with scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So the scope 1, where what we do, and we have a commitment as well. So we have moved to biofuel. In one of our plants is completely running on biofuel, completely. And there are other plants where we have moved, but because of the technology and availability, it's a percentage shift only. So there's some kind of technology innovations that we're looking at. That's one side, but within the plant, another element is also when, it's not just about boilers, but it's also about certain other areas where the plant uses for fuel. So we're looking at vegetable fuel, so natural ester fuel for running generators and all that stuff. So that's something we've been looking at across. The second thing, and that's where the RE roadmap, when we look at it innovation-wise, is very important, because the availability on a cost basis is still a challenge, and specifically when I'm talking about availability of other alternative fuels in place of renewable fuels. The second thing is, whilst we look at internally, we also look at externally, where we're getting energy from the grid. How much can we amplify and how much can we accelerate it? So we've invested massively on renewable energy projects. I would say where we started, it was like a couple of years ago. From there to now, we have reached about 23%, and our aspiration is to reach 30% by 2026. That's why I'm saying we only keep it 2026, because we've pegged 5-year goals for us. And I'm very sure that we will go above that, because we've invested massively in solar energy, hybrid, within the plant, captive, we've invested. So all of that's kind of been taking place on a regular basis in India and outside as well, because we have 2 plants outside. The other bit is when, I mentioned about that. So when we're talking about moving to renewable energy, you just can't be fixated within your boundary or within your manufacturing as well. So outside is something that we've been looking at in terms of logistics. How do we go for electrification? Raw materials, we've moved massively. And one of the examples I could take is that actually embracing circular economy is how we, when a tire comes on the road, it's vulcanized form, so it's kind of really hard. So you de-vulcanize rubber in a non-chemical manner and utilize that rubber back into your product mix, where there is safety and durability as well. So that is something that we are massively looking at, and we've got commitments in terms of how much of recycled material we want to increase, because that is one of the biggest things. Lastly, I would just talk about, in terms of when you talk about the RE journey and all that stuff, very importantly, in the morning, as in before my session, there was a mention of offsets. So offsets for us is only for hard to abate, yes, but we are one of the organizations, we've been working on nature-based solutions through CSR and non-CSR mangrove conservation for the longest time. And it's not even in our boundary. It's not. So that is something we've been looking at, and there is an extensive piece of work that we have done in reforestation. We are a part of 1T.org. I think somebody mentioned that as well in the morning. So we're a part of that, which is where we looking at reforestation, afforestation, but not in monoculture forests. That's very important. One has to be very mindful of that. And the other bit is looking at nature-based solutions such as mangroves or your clean fuel. All of that is there, but I'll be very honest, we calculate our own carbon credits, but we've never used them at the moment as offsets because we're trying to say that, okay, it's very important to kind of calculate and see where you are, but it's very important to first make sure that you have completely looked at every possible solution within the organization, outside the organization, to go and move on to the renewable energy commitment that the organization has embarked upon. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I kind of...
No, but you have. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Deepan, the same question for you. What is your company's energy mix, and in terms of renewables specifically, what are some of the things that you have done already and are moving towards?
So as of now, in India, entire retail operations, warehouses, and offices, what we have, it runs on 100% renewable since 2019. And we have 23 solar sites, on-site solar with stores and warehouses mix. And 6 to 7 sites we source through green tariff directly from the discom. And rest is through like energy attribute certificates. So when I say energy attribute certificates, we don't just go and procure from the market. So we have a certain criteria to handpick the credits. So from the project which is newly commissioned, or in simple term, I would say the project which hasn't reached the ROI. So it contributes towards the project's the funding, and also it promotes towards the development of RE. So even though I'm not a big fanatic of like EACs, so our intention is to reduce the EACs as much as possible and to increase the real sourcing. But the challenge over here for us is more than 75% of our operations are in leased premise or in malls. So there is a challenge to source directly, and that is one. And second thing is, so our consumption as a store, so 1,000 square meter store or 2,000 square meter store, the consumption is like very low. So sourcing for such a low quantum across the country at different locations in different premises, it's always a challenge. So we are finding a way to how to source it. So through the landlord-tenant partnership. So that we are working out, and also we are waiting for some validations from the external bodies for that. And so once, even if we address that, so another challenge that lies over there is how do you secure the reliability of RE, what you procure? How do you avoid double counting? So how do you bundle it with EACs when you buy the real renewable energy? So these are something that we keep working on. But on an overall thing, like for retail operations and logistics, we source 100% since 2019.
Right.
And for supply chain, more than 50% of energy consumed by our priority suppliers are from renewable sources.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Kumar, same question for you. The energy mix overall of Fortis hospitals and how much renewables do you have?
Thanks for this question. Fortis Hospital, Bangalore, operates on 90.4% renewable energy. However, this is extremely fragmented, and this is something that kind of shows the regulatory challenges that a building faces. So in Bangalore, micro market, there are 4 different Fortis hospitals. One is the biggest 300-bedded hospital, which is operating on 90.4%, right? Now there are 2 hospitals which are almost in the same area, right? But because they do not cross the threshold, right, for accessing the green power from the vendor that we are taking, suddenly it drops down to 0. In Punjab, in Amritsar, it's 40%. In Mulund, it's around 29%. So again, this whole thing varies across the regions, and we are waiting for the day when regulations ease up and we are able to kind of source regardless of the consumption that that hospital has or the bed that hospital has. We are able to get the access first. We are ready to invest, but the access is not there. Second thing, overall, as Fortis Group console level, we are at 15.4% of renewable energy right now. But like I said, it's fragmented.
Right. Dr. Monga, same question.
So entire portfolio, we have around 13 hotels in India.
Right.
So entire portfolio, our Palace Hotel, our own hotels are 90%, at 50% on renewable power. So idea is to go 60%. Bangalore, definitely, I was in Chennai before this. 5 years I was in Chennai. Chennai regulation is totally different. Means like it is very easy. We own windmills there, and we have our own solar plants. We have a windmills down south, and down south we have a solar plant. It's very easy. You supply a power to grid, and you get a credit in your electricity bill monthly. So there in Bangalore, we are almost 80%. Chennai, I was there. That is also 70-75%. Udaipur, we have our offset, our owned. These all plants are owned by our company. And recently, we have installed a solar plant in Udaipur and Jaipur also. So idea is to increase the power in Udaipur and plus in Jaipur. So get target is to get maximum on renewable power. So that's what regulatory. So we are just waiting for that the single window which can open, and we can just go there. We want to invest in solar. We want to invest in renewables, but we want a single window where we can go and easily apply for that. Even I have applied in NDMC here also
Right.
that we want to put up a plant, but still there is no regulation
No
for
regulation.
that. Yeah,
Right.
so we are just waiting for that.
Right. Mr. Lachhwani, coming to you, actually, I have two questions for you. One is you spoke a bit about how you're also sensitizing other players in the space. So, but from your client's side, do you have, or are you seeing more and more, from your client side, some sense of that, you should towards you a mandate for going for clean transport or having cleaner practices in your operations, like some of your more, I would say, environmentally conscious clients?
So I would say more and more of our customers are looking forward to green transportation, and in their kind of request for quotation and everything, the negotiation stage, they do ask and check about all of those things. But my take is that these are at a very, very threshold level. What I mean is, for example, if my organization is at P80, the qualifying criteria would be P30 as well. So there would be many, many others who are very, very in the nascent stages in the decarbonization journey, even they would cut through. But I see the customers getting a bit sensitized, and at least inclusion of those requirements to start with. Second, how we are trying to influence them is, for example, recently we created a carbon emissions calculator in which customers can look for themselves that they want to transport something from city X to city Y. What are the various modes available to them? And in each and every ways of transportation, how much carbon they would emit. In case they use the rail route, in case they use road plus rail, in case they use coastal roll, rail and things like those. So they can see for themselves, and that should help themselves to decide which suits them the best. Perhaps the team over here can do some Googling whenever you find time and explore the tool. It would be helpful for everybody and push you all in your organizations for the greener transportation.
Right. The second part of the question is, obviously everyone talked about their own energy mix, but in your the vehicles that you use or the transport options that you use, what are you moving towards? EVs? Are you moving towards hydrogen? Are you moving towards SAF? I don't know, some of those fuels.
SAIF?
Sorry, SAF. I mean, is sustainable aviation
Oh.
fuel.
Fine. So on the trucking side, we are working with various OEMs for electric trucks. So far, they are not really successful. You can say they are still in the pilot mode, and we have done a couple of pilots at our places. But on the commercial viability scale, these things are pretty low. But the development, as we speak, is happening at an extremely faster pace. And I imagine in next 1.5 years or so, we'll have commercially viable electric trucks as well in the field. So far you would see those Chota Hathi, 1-tonner and things like those, which are kind of commercially viable. But what we use is kind of 40, 50, 60 tonners and things. So those are not, as of now, commercially available. And we are working. What was the second question? I'm missing something.
Just
Hydrogen.
on
Hydrogen again is a very, very nascent stage. So,
Right. Okay.
we are only talking about it. I haven't seen any practical stuff so far.
Right. Ms. Sahay, when you deal with your clients, what kind of a business model do you see most of your clients going for? Do they prefer procuring power from exchanges? Do they prefer open access? Do they prefer captive? Do they prefer group captive? What kind of model are you witnessing more and more in this?
So, Kushbu, there is no one thing that fits all. So, I think all the players in the market, everybody in the industry is going for a mix of all of these, right? So, and it also depends on the requirement. For example, if the requirement is less, then it could be a rooftop only, mixed with obviously some discount supply power, only because solar is infirm, right? Then, if the requirement is more, then it could be a mix of captive plus some third-party PPAs or short-term PPAs and all this sort of thing, with backed by some exchange power as well. So we've seen a mix depending on what the requirement is, when the requirement is, and what industry they're coming from, really.
Right. Okay. Deepan, the next question begins from you. I think all of you spoke a bit about what you want to do a lot in terms of decarbonization and net zero and all of those things, but are somewhere constrained with maybe some regulatory hurdles, somewhere the policy doesn't allow. So if you had to pick a policy ask for the kind of things that you want to do or you want to implement in your organization, what would those be?
So, see, there are two things. One is the open access regulations. So, if you see at the country level, every state has a different policies. Especially for the organization which has a presence in all the states, and we have like the global commitments. So meeting these things are like, it's very difficult in different states. For instance, if I take one of the state as a Punjab, so I have a difficulties in sourcing through intra-state, so open access. But I had to like go for an interstate for that. But commercial viability will become a problem for me. So if at all I just like do that, because I need to pay like the state transmissions and like between the 2 states or 3 states when I source it, and also when I source it, so it becomes commercially unviable because we have some subsidies given to certain industries already. So when they move towards the renewables or a clean energy, so they need to compromise that. So it becomes even more like unviable. So easiness of the policy and like the grid infrastructures and like simplicity will like do a lot in terms of this. And second ask would be in terms of the green tariff. In India, unlike the other countries in Europe, so the green tariff is not so simple. So when you source a green tariff, so the traceability, age of the project where it is coming in, so whether it's like over and above the RPO obligation of so the respective discom. So these questions are always unanswered. So the traceability is something is very crucial. So at the country level, rather than acting as like every state acting as a different country. So if at all we have one country, one traceability and one policy, so that will ease a lot and speed up the process of transition.
Right. Mr. Kumar, you also spoke a bit about some regulatory issues that you face in doing the things that you want to. So what is the one policy ask that?
Right, so we keep hearing about the threshold of if I want to not install solar plates on my rooftop because it has its own sense of maintenance cost and all that.
Right.
Or if I don't want to, I don't have the space to install a windmill.
Right.
Right. Then there are various vendors right now which are providing services. Can we streamline the asks? The threshold limits. And if the government is, and we do hear it keeps getting, the threshold keeps getting lowered, right? But then at the end of it, somebody has to take a decision on, regardless of what you are going to use the energy for, can you use only RE and can you make it commercially viable? What my friend was saying, yes. Yeah.
Right. Dr. Monga?
I'm adding to this, like a kind of single window for all this kind of activities. Means the regulation should be like, it should be very simple. Like I have a solar plant, my company has a solar plant in Jaipur. I can be able to use it here, a kind of national grid. Or I have a big plant, like 250 megawatt plant. My company owns that, but I'm not able to use it in Delhi. So that is the thing. It should be very clear. Okay, you have a company, owned company. He has a solar plant, but I am not able to use it. Here. So there should be very clear regulatory guidelines. So that can be used anywhere. It should be a national grid which is giving a power, and you can use it.
Right. Ms. Grover?
Well, I'll just take a step back. I think people have mentioned about RPO obligations and of course the national grid as well. But I'll just tell you in terms of when you're looking at globally. And that's a very interesting piece that I was reading recently. It was a research done, and we talk about policies a lot. A research paper had reviewed 1,500 climate policies across 41 countries.
Okay.
And in there, only 63 of the policies were actually going to were working towards a net zero goal, which the whole world is aspiring to keep 1.5 degrees, below the 1.5 degrees. So fundamentally, I see, and I'm not pinpointing on anything. Fundamentally, our policies across the world and then within India are kind of individually working towards it, but it doesn't still add up to what we want, where we want to achieve. And I think it's a testimony, and it's actually some of the examples have already been highlighted over here. And for the tire industry, of course, there's the PAT scheme that comes in, and there are kind of loopholes over there. So I don't want to open up. It's like opening a Pandora's box. But more or less, if you were to ask me, I would say national grid and the RPO obligations across various states within India is one is finding it difficult to kind of manage. But overall, if I've already spoken globally, we just definitely need to do something about policy making, because climate change policy is the one that's going to get us to keeping below 1.5 degrees, which is very, very important.
Right. Mr. Lachhwani, a policy ask.
So I think people have said that. All I would say is, as of now, we as a humanity are in the middle of a big shift in the way energy gets produced. And this is the pace at which things are changing, they are just incredible as per me. And we as mankind have never seen this type of shift anytime in past. And hence everybody, right from we as individual retail customers to industries to generators to policymakers, do not know how to grapple with this. And again, amongst all the powers, where we are moving on to are the infirm powers. That makes it even more challenging. So things are happening. So no specific ask. People have said that. I'll repeat that every state is its own. So people find it challenging, difficult to understand. People spoke about VPPA. That's a challenge. People don't know yes and no. So that would continue. But the problem is massive, and people are trying to solve it, right from regulatory bodies to advocacy bodies.
Right. Ms. Sahay.
Yeah, so why should I ask for any clarity? Because the gap helps me make my money.
Right.
But jokes apart, honestly, what Rinika said makes a lot of sense. All the intention is right? All the policies are working towards, all regulatory interventions are working towards, getting more and more, people committing towards decarbonization and assisting them achieve it. But yes, because of too much intervention and the fact that power and setting up of power projects and all of this is also not just under the center, but also comes under the territory of the states, there is a lot of confusion that gets created. There have been various instances where center has come up with a regulation, and they have been insisting and passing orders on the states to duplicate those into the state policies, but that's not been happening. So, which obviously, leads to issues for all the players in the market, whether they're consumers or whether they're generators or whether they're transmission companies, to eventually set up these projects. And then I think more than policy, there's also, for example, transmission largely comes under the state. And what we need to do is that augment the national grid, have that green corridor set up now so that, there is no delay in terms of connectivity is being granted to the projects and the power being supplied seamlessly across states. We've been talking about cross-border transmission of electricity, but here at the moment we are sitting in a position where, even interstate transmission of power is becoming challenges because of the fact that we need to augment our transmission capacities significantly.
Right. On that note, I'll go to some audience questions or comments. Yes, can we bring the mic to him, please? Ushers. Can we please have the mic? Please introduce yourself, and you can put up the question to just one panelist, not all the panelists. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I let whoever wants to take the
Yeah,
question?
that we can allow.
My name is Vishal. I work in the power team at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. I think, let me go with Deepan then. Deepan, you mentioned interstate open access, getting approvals, the lack of uniformity. My sense is there are many reasons why this happens, but a key reason could be that there is an acute lack of information asymmetry in the market. There are not enough adequate data pipelines in the power sector, which allows you to make sure that if your open access is being rejected, whether is it actually because of a transmission constraint or is there other reasons? Legally, we have seen this go to court in Aptel, where for grid security reasons, people have curtailed, but that was not so. So I want to get a sense whether you think this is a challenge because you have a global footprint. Perhaps you don't face this problem elsewhere, but you do face it in India. Thanks.
Of course, one is like a lack of information. That's I agree with you. So about like so where and how it is feasible in terms of the availability and like the policies, feasibilities, approvals, and all these things. But those kind of things can be addressed to an extent, right? So the issue, it gets stopped for two reasons. One is like when there is no availability of the resources within the state. Okay, so you will go and search for the resources outside, right? And that's where like when there is no ready solution available, so you just like go outside the state and you need to search for it. And again, you need to search for like the commercial viability that keeps you on a long-term commitments. So long-term commitments, commercial viability, and then like taking some effort, which will be like visible after 2 years or like a 1.5 year. So this questions a lot of the conversion transition plans. Okay, so people will not be confident enough to take the decisions. One is like on as I mentioned, the traceability and the availability of information, and these are the added challenges that what we have.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Please bring the mic to him.
Yeah, my question would be to Mr. Hitesh, maybe because as you were saying that your organization is the one who is contributing to stage 3 kind of a net zero part. And you told that you will be converting into e-vehicles and all such aspect. So how you see like just converting from conventional vehicle to e-vehicle, will it serve the purpose, or you are also looking at the aspect that from which sources those EVs are getting charged? Are you still using that conventional power to charge those EV, or for that also you are having something in your mind? Sorry, I should introduce, I am TK Sinha from Power Finance Corporation.
Hi. So good question. So obviously the thought process is let's electrify whatsoever we can. And as on today, we have learned how to source electricity from renewable sources. All the other forms of energy are a bit difficult. And hence, let's electrify and start sourcing electricity from renewable sources. That's the game plan.
Great. Any other questions or comments? No? Then to close the panel, I'll just go one by one and I'll start from Mr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar, as sustainability heads of your respective organizations, as sustainability experts, what is your general outlook? Do you feel, it's positive for if your organizations are moving towards net zero journeys? Also, as sustainability heads, what is the level of difficulty that you deal with in terms of getting, approvals for some of the things that you want to implement? Is that becoming easier year by year, or is that still difficult to, getting approvals from your boards, getting approvals from your CEOs? Just to end the discussion.
Interesting question. See, as a person, I'm very optimistic. As a person, I think that's the attitude that people carry. sustainability is something that kind of keeps me awake at nights. I really think that we are moving very fast towards that. The challenges that we all are highlighting, that means that things are happening. It's very easy to write an essay on pollution, which we have in our childhood, but now we can see there are people who are trying. Back in my organization, let's look at it this way. Whenever we try to increase our ESG team, we don't look at credentials or other things. We just look for passion. And there are enough number of people in all the hospitals who really want to contribute, would volunteer to be the ESG champions of that particular hospital. And coming to the board, I'm very confident that out of many different reports that get shared to the board for their input, I think the sustainability report receives the highest number of feedback, because everybody is very interested in knowing what are we doing, how are we trying to solve these problems. So all in all, I'll say that as a company and as an individual, I'm very hopeful that we are in the right direction, and someday we are going to solve this problem.
Right. Dr. Monga, what is your level of optimism?
So definitely, we are going in a very, you can say, a very right direction, and the amount of like sustainability, it's like into our, you can say, a financial strategy also. So what we planning for next month, next year's budgets. So it is part of our like all business strategies. We have replaced everything like with the plastics. We moved to all the sustainable products. If you ever stayed at Leela, any of the Leela hotel, you'll see all the plastic has removed. Means we have our own bottling plant like this. We have removed tons of plastics from the group, and all the brush, all the shaving like razors. This is all our bamboo, and all the clean films, all biodegradable. So we are moving definitely as a company, as a organization, we are moving in a you can say a very right direction, and hopefully definitely we are going to achieve like the intention is right. So we want the regulations has to be on a right path, and it is actually rightly said by our team that intentions are right, maybe a lack of knowledge and things are moving very fast. It will come online.
Right. Deepan, what is the situation at Decathlon? How optimistic are you? And do you easily get approvals for all the projects that you want to implement in the sustainability side?
Yeah, so sustainability is no more a good to do action. It's integral part of the business, and it's also one of the key pillars what we have. We equally value people, planet, and profit. And in that case, we do have a budgeting, we do have a board discussions, so especially on this vertical. And so it's not so difficult for us to get some approvals, especially for when it concerns to sustainability. Of course, it major cases it helps us to save operational expenses or like optimize operational expenses as well. So that's very crucial, because it should not go down. So as long as the business happens good for any of the organizations, so sustainability will be like one of the integral parts. So what if there is no like sustenance on the business? So even then the sustainability actions should continue. So for that, it's always crucial to integrate it with the financial aspects, and it's already a part of it, and we are getting a good support internally.
Right. Ms. Grover?
Thanks. So I think I'll just talk in terms of what exactly. So actually sustainability, like what Deepan was saying, we also have that as one of our key pillars of growth, along with four other pillars. But very importantly, when we are talking about as sustainability, you asked, your first question was, how do you feel about it? And then of course you have to feel passionate and positive, otherwise you'd just be like, in the world is every day, every week there is a new something that's come up. So it's so dynamic. If you have not up your game, then you're just kind of thinking, what the hell, where exactly am I? So of course I feel positive and things that are happening. And now to your answer to your second question in terms of where exactly is it with the management? So I would just say that for us, it's because it's one of the pillars. It's actually very, very deep rooted. So sustainability only from the point of view of environment, I'm going to talk, because it's a very ESG or it's kind of really huge. So for us currently, like one small example is internal carbon pricing. It's factored in our project calculations as well to that extent. So that even though those legislation, carbon taxes in India are not there and overseas are there, so we, in Europe, but we've started to look at that. More importantly, the KPIs of the entire organization, we have sustainability indicators, and we are linking the ESG indicators with the variable pay as well. So that is the level of integration of sustainability in the organization. The governance process in the organization is absolutely amazing. And it gets the prevalence. I mean, I present to the board as well. So yeah, so it's right there, very important, a pivotal point, which is discussed regularly.
Right.
Thanks.
Mr. Lachhwani.
So my take is, as far as the work around decarbonization and renewable energy and green energy is concerned, the world is moving at a phenomenally high pace. And we know, for example, everybody would have read the articles during daytime and the peak time, energy prices in Europe become negative, because that is the kind of solar installation or the wind installations have happened. And the similar is the case when we were seeing the dynamic price chart, what the gentleman from IEX showed. That's the scenario for India as well. So in general, things are happening at a very, very fast pace, and I am extremely optimistic. How many of us have spoken about, say, solar energy 15 years ago? Absolutely nobody. And now all of the organizations have these. So the rate of change is awesome, and I'm sure very soon we as a world would peak our carbon emissions, and then we'll start our downward journey. And I believe the same is in all the boards, and I'll talk about the board at my place. I find more push from the board than I need to push them. So it's more of a ask from their side that why don't we have solutions? And hence we go out in the market and start giving demand signals. Please do something. In case you want to produce, we want to partner with you.
Right.
The example that I spoke about, say, electric trucks, for example, we are working with OEMs. Let's jointly produce. Let us use my facility as a test ground for it to work or not. So,
Right.
lots of support. Very optimistic.
Thank you. Ms. Sahay, the final word to sum up the discussion.
So I think on optimism level, I'll say there is